Artificial intelligence is really it's a more efficient way of managing our existing knowledge. AI doesn't know anything new. It just takes all the knowledge that's out there and compiles it together in a very efficient and quick manner. I like to say it's like shoes. You can run without shoes, but it sure helps to have them.
Before the tipping point, the call is clear and bright. AI and climate leaders ready for the fight.
Seaweed and networks. That's what we're going to be talking about in today's episode. Welcome to Before the Tipping Point podcast, where AI and sustainability meets climate leadership. Today we have Majid Hajibeigy, who is the CEO of the Canadian Pacifico Seaweed. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it, and it's an honor to be here.
I'm so happy that you had the time to be with us today because I am really excited about the ecopreneurship that you're doing. And so just for those of you who doesn't know what Canadian Pacifico Seaweed does is that it is a company here that's focusing on systems to solutions and designed to work harmoniously with our environment, society, and economy. Majid has a degree from the University of British Columbia and hands-on experience in sustainable food production. He found his true calling in the fight against climate change through seaweed. The agricultural sector, a major source of greenhouse gases, plays a pivotal role in our planet's future. That's why he's passionate about transforming it from within. Welcome again, Majid.
Thank you so much. That was lovely. When you were talking about what we would do, I was like, wow, that's a lot of nice things that you said about me. I don't know if I could live up to all that.
You already do, you're already living it. So let's get the show started. So maybe I'll ask you the first question about the vision and brand identity, where, in our world today, increasingly focus on sustainability and climate impact. How do you see the Pacifico brand in itself? And maybe you can explain between Canadian Pacifico and then the Seaweed Network, contributing
Of
to the
course.
global conversation and shaping consumer or industry perceptions.
Absolutely. I guess to start with, I mean, I came from a science background, ecological background, and actually, I first started off in animal welfare. So everything I've always done has been rooted in science. And so sometimes in the world of business, the leaders aren't always coming from that background. The business world teaches us different things and has different mandates, essentially. Scientists are always trying to better the solution, whereas business is trying to scale the solution. And so I think that's kind of one of the key things that sets us apart is from the top down. We are coming from a ecology background, science background, so everything has to be truthful in terms of the science that goes into it, the biology, the chemistry, the physics. And so as a core foundation, our company is focused on true impact, and that can only be done if it really works.
Like that you mentioned about it's really science backed. I think a lot of the greenwashing is coming from really mostly people. Some people, anyway, are able to just say the words and the marketing, but not really walk their talk, if I may have to call that. And so, my next question is about on your market and sustainability
Mhm.
impact. So, maybe you can describe to us how is the Seaweed Network leveraging AI technologies? Maybe there's a lot of talk about artificial intelligence right now to transform the seaweed industry, and maybe a little bit of example to make it a little bit more concrete on what measurable climate or sustainability outcomes you're aiming to achieve through these innovations.
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, I'm a big believer of, if it doesn't make money, it doesn't make sense. So as much as I come from the softer ecology science background, sometimes in that world there's some challenges as well because our focus there is so much on the impact and the ecology that sometimes we neglect the fact that everyone needs to get paid and it needs to be scalable. And so, I've been trying to marry the two, and that's where I realized, there's certain skills that I have, but there's many that I don't. And so I'm always really sparked by someone who has something that I don't, and I want to work with them or I want to kind of bring them into my world. And if you give me enough time, I can always find a way to connect seaweeds to your life one way or another. You could be a mechanic, a hairstylist, it doesn't matter. I'll find a way. And so essentially, that's how the Seaweed Network came together. It was really out of necessity. I don't have all the answers. I don't have all the solutions, but someone out there does. So, we don't believe in reinventing the wheel. There's experts that have been doing this long, long before us. Seaweeds have been around in Asia for many, 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 many years before Europe and America. And even in Europe and North America, they've been around for over 40, 50, 75 years. And, there's ways to do things that work, and there's technologies that exist. And even if it doesn't exist within the seaweed industry, it exists in another industry, aquaculture or mechanics or engineering. So to avoid reinventing the wheel or trying to do something that someone else has already perfected, we started developing a network. And that's really kind of my forte. That's really the only superpower that I'll claim. I'm a big networker. I love talking to different people from all over the world. And, if I find that someone has a piece of knowledge that I'm after, I'll just reach out to them. It's 2025, so we can, shoot a message and give a phone call and hop on a Zoom meeting. And then eventually you have a little bit of a familiarity with someone. So then it's a quick little flight ticket or a train ride or a car ride down to their office, meet with them in person, really bond with them, connect with them, and then bring them into our pool of resources. So really, when you're calling on the Seaweed Network, you're not just calling on me, you're calling on everyone that I know and everyone that my people know. And someone within that circle has been there and done that. And so we're able to bring in that expertise. Japan are, the originators of seaweed. Korea has perfected seaweed restoration. China has scaled seaweed production and processing beyond anyone's dreams. And so those are the areas that I started to focus on and travel to, make connections with, and it's incredible. This industry and the people in it are so open to collaboration, to supporting each other, and really they just started bringing me into their world. It all started with obviously Dr. Louis Drool in Bamfield, who brought me into this whole world. Everyone from then on, I could run tangents on all the people that have supported me, have always, been open to supporting this 20-year-old kid from BC trying to grow a couple lines of kelp, and then it just kind of organically grew. Over the years, I had this contact and that contact, and anytime I called them or emailed them, they'd pick up. And so then it became from an unofficial friendship to a more formal advisory network. So that's kind of how the Seaweed Network came together. I can tell you about CPS and what we do specifically. We found our niche in this whole world in the tech space and basically being a facilitator to bring that information from abroad and present it to those in need locally.
So tell us more about that. Maybe I'll quiz you a little bit because you
Yeah,
mentioned you're going to be able to connect seaweed with anything else. So let's say
anything.
connect seaweed with AI.
AI. Okay. So artificial intelligence is really it's a more efficient way of managing our existing knowledge. AI doesn't know anything new. It just takes all the knowledge that's out there and compiles it together in a very efficient and quick manner. AI can help us in many aspects, from analyzing and monitoring our field results, like from, if we're monitoring the growth rates and monitoring the nutrients that go into the ocean, they correlate with the nutrients that come out of the seaweeds. But it goes beyond that as well. It allows, newer people to younger people to get involved and catch up. There's a lot of knowledge to catch up on when it comes to what Dr. Drool knows, and I will never scratch the surface. But I have a little bit of a cheat code now, whereas Louis grew up without AI. I'm able to tap into that resource and extract the really key important pieces. Now, there's a little bit of a downfall to that. As you know, we may get ahead of ourselves and think of ourselves as experts just because we have access to AI. And that's not entirely true either, because there's a lot of nuances that AI just won't be able to. It will be able to comprehend it. It's just that it won't be able to logically organize it. It may not think of every point unless you give it the right prompts, right? So human intelligence is absolutely critical and must be a part of the equation. But AI can, I like to say it's like shoes. You can run without shoes, but it sure helps to have them.
That I just love that. And so the second example I have in my mind would be connect seaweed with, let's say, cats, just because I have two, so I'm
Cats. Yeah. No, absolutely. It's easy. So I'll bring that to nutrition. Across our planet, whether it's plants, animals, or humans, and regardless of which country we're from, we are all deficient in one thing. And that one thing are minerals. And the reason for that is because minerals are water soluble. So when it rains, they drain out of our soils. And when we're farming our food, we're not adding those nutrients back in. We're just adding nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And so often those micronutrients are lacking in the soil, and those microbes no longer have that. And so then the plants don't get those nutrients, and then the animals that eat them, and then the humans that eat them. And so we're all deficient in minerals in one way or another. Now, maybe wild animals, not so much, but domestic and farm animals, absolutely. Now, when those minerals wash away from the rainwater through our soils into the riverways and eventually into the ocean, seaweeds act like a sponge and they suck all that up. And then they make them bioavailable back to us again. So essentially, it comes down to nutrients, and seaweeds provide a way for us to recycle those nutrients back into our diets. For example, your kitties.
Very good. Well, I won't test you because obviously you got 100%. So I want to move on to the business model and market position. And maybe you can tell us a
Yeah.
story how you got involved with the Canada's Ocean Supercluster. But my question on this is maybe you can describe the core customer segments that the Seaweed
Yes.
Network and Canadian Pacifico serves today. And how do
Yeah.
these segments influence your revenue model and service offerings?
Sure. Thank you. So, we got to make sure that what we do is based on the three pillars of sustainability. A lot of people like to use that buzzword, but really, what does that mean? And the three pillars comes down to social benefits, ecological benefits, and finally, economic. It has to be feasible. It has to be financially viable for it to scale and for it to have true impact. Now, in the seaweed space, I mean, when I speak about the seaweed space, I'm mostly talking about Europe and North America. Asia is a whole different world. They have things down packed better than we will ever have. And so it's a little bit of a different game. In North America and Europe, the seaweed industry it's not something that will succeed at an industrial, monocrop scale. The way that the finances work and the cogs work is that as you scale up, it's not a reduction in your expenses, it's an increase. You have different problems at 1,000 hectares that you do at 10 hectares. And so what we found was that the only real successful operations outside of Asia over the past, say, 100 years have been either sustainable wild harvest or an aggregation of small scale producers that work together. We could use the word cooperative, but I like to say, make friends and work with friends. And so that's kind of how our business model developed. It was like really based on the teachings of Dr. Louis Giroux. He was my mentor in the game. And Canadian Kelp Resources, his company, has been around for over 40 years, producing seaweed products at a small scale, about 25 dry kilograms per harvest batch in every few days throughout the summer. And it's been proven to be scalable and proven to be financially viable and sustainable for over 40 years. So really, I mean, the foundation of everything I've built my beliefs on has been from his teachings. And so, our pursuit was to do this. We want to be big, but we want to be small. So how do we do that? We hold hands. And basically, a bunch of small scale producers coming together to meet one supply demand chain. That gives the market the trust and confidence in small scale producers, because if one producer fails, then they have backups. It also gives that consistency and that quality grade that we are looking for. The market demand is actually not for massive quantities of kelp. When we talk about Europe and North America, especially in the higher value chains, it's for small batch rapid supply. And really, that's only possible by having all hands on deck and many small producers working towards the same goal. So that's kind of how our philosophy came together of facilitating and empowering and supporting the small scale fishermen to produce high quality, instead of selling 100 kilograms for $1 each, they're selling 10 kilograms for $10, right? And then they're making the same amount of money, doing less work, and the value goes farther as well. That's kind of a romantic painting, but we can get into the nitty-gritty if you like as well.
No, that's amazing. Actually, I'm so delighted you mentioned about the pillars because I had the same thing as you know, my background is in aquaculture for 18 years, and I
Mm,
always keep on talking, I think for ages now, about our three pillars of sustainability is actually leadership, partnership, and stewardship. Pun intended with the
beautiful.
ship word. But you
It is.
mentioned social, psychological, and what's the third one?
Social, ecological, and economic.
Ecological and economic. And you also mentioned at the beginning of our call, about not just being circular economy and profitability. And so I really love what you mentioned about there. And also, I think you were talking something about, small quantity, but speedier. What was the word you
Yeah, small batch, rapid supply.
Yeah. So can you explain what that means?
Yeah, of course. So, when we work with chefs, for example, or in the skincare industry or nutraceuticals, the higher value product lines. Agriculture is a little bit different. Textiles and commodity is a little bit different, but we try not to get into the commodity space too much because we just simply can't compete with the Asian markets. Our focus is more on the higher value niche markets. Now, when we work with our chefs like Chef Will and Chef Felix, many chefs around Vancouver, nobody wants to sit on a bunch of kelp in their freezer or in their pantries. Instead, they would rather have small quantities that are super fresh and vibrant colors and, beautiful plants every week or every 2 weeks. Now, when we do this large scale monocrop, you have to harvest all your crop within 30 days. And that doesn't really deliver the product that they're looking for. In the skincare space as well, a little bit of kelp goes a long way. And it's quite expensive to produce those extracts, so it doesn't actually financially make sense to be flooding the markets with a bunch of excessive seaweed that's lower grade, right? So essentially what we're trying to do is meet the demand and listen to our clients and give them what they're looking for, which is small scale and small batch rapid supply again. And so that's only really feasible with small producers that are able to manage that type of timeline and supply chain.
I love that. I really love that. As you know, our shellfish is also a premium product. So I totally relate to everything that you're saying and just focusing on the niche market because I think at the end of the day, it's either you compete by quantity or you compete by quality with this niche marketing that you're doing. Which leads me to my next question. What have you been seeing as the biggest challenges and opportunities as well that you face when you're scaling AI-enabled solutions for sustainable seaweed cultivation? And maybe how do you balance this rapid innovation with long-term environmental stewardship?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. So, the seaweed industry is since about 2019, it's been going through a little bit of a phase, and it's the new kid on the block and, getting a lot of attention. But the reality is that every 10 or 15 years or so, we see this cycle. We see the same pattern. It pops up in the news, and everybody's like amazed by it. Wow, it's new, but it's not new. It happened 10 years ago and 20 years ago before that. And then the fad fades away. And so for us, longevity is important, and we want to be here in 20, 30 years. I need a career out of this. I'm not just doing this for a quick get rich quick scheme. And so for it to be sustainable long term, we need to work with the environment. If we expand too fast, it's easy to do that. I mean, it's 2025. We have the technologies and equipment to put in massive farms overnight. We could overload the ocean with kelp. It's just that we got to be, aware of the repercussions. Remember earlier, the economic feasibility is super important for it to scale, but it has to provide ecological benefits as well. And for it to do that, we have to make sure that we're not harming the oceans. Historically, let's say a region could support 100 hectares, and today we have 1 hectare of kelp. These are just figurative numbers. Then yes, we can expand to 100 hectares. But what happens when we grow 1,000 hectares of kelp, 10 times more than historically viable in that region? Well, we completely mess up the chemistry in the ocean, right? And actually there, we're adding more carbon to the area because the kelp breaks off and feeds the heterotrophs, and then the heterotrophs produce more carbon dioxide. So we have to make sure that we're not going to be coming in with our tools in automation and intelligence, quote unquote, and taking over Mother Nature. We have to work with Mother Nature and support how she likes to grow and how she likes to perform. And then she's going to provide the highest quality, most beautiful nutrients for us, and then we can harvest at a small scale. And take what we need, essentially. And then that last part, I mean, the social benefit is also part of this. In Europe and North America, the goal is to work with the locals. And so if we just bring in these huge farms that require these massive boats, the coastal people, they don't have that technology. So then the money goes elsewhere. So then we have to hire these huge companies to come in and da da da. But every fisherman has a small boat. Every fisherman has a herring skiff or a crew boat or some small fishing boat. And so when we build it in a way where it's small scale production, then those fishermen are the ones that are able to participate and benefit from this new industry that we're building.
Amazing. And so I think from all of that, what I gathered from you, my biggest takeaway from our conversation is I really like, again, that you mentioned about the pillars to make sustainability more concrete for people, economical, ecological, you mentioned social and psychological as well. But also, I think really focusing as well in terms of growth strategy and innovation. And I lied. I said that was my last question, but it just come to my mind.
Yeah,
Maybe
no, feel free.
you can
I
share with
love
our
it.
audience your partnership with Ocean Supercluster. How did that come
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
about? Because it's very inspiring, and I want that
Oh,
shared to our
absolutely.
audience. Take it away.
Oh, for sure, for sure. No, thank you. Ocean Supercluster, I mean, I'm going to mention a few more. Protein Industries Canada, Canadian Food Innovation Network, the Ocean Startup Projects, the MyTax, the IRAPs, all these agencies that have been supporting us throughout the years. And now with the biggest check from Ocean Supercluster, it not only makes it's not just their cash contribution that supports us it's their tick. It's their I guess their cosign, right? When banks or investors hear that we're getting funding from government, I mean, the government doesn't always give out free money. But when they are supporting you, that means that they're really interested in that there's something really with good potential and viable opportunity there. And so then it gives confidence to other supporters and collaborators to work with us and to help us scale this. Because at the end of the day, this thing is so new and it's so important that we can't do it on our own. We're an industry that has to be vertically integrated, not out of choice, but out of necessity. We can't just go to a third-party processing facility that knows how to handle seaweed. We either have to go train them on it or have to build it ourselves. And so being vertically integrated sounds romantic, but it's actually it's almost an impossible endeavor, especially as a new industry. So having this government support and not just, again, not their financials, not just their cosign, but the network they bring, the expertise they bring, they help us. My coach Warren always likes to say this, they help us prevent ourselves from impaling ourselves on sharp corners. And so then we're able to learn from, again, more experts from around us to develop something that's real and authentic and not just has a good intention, but actually works mechanically. You know what I mean? 1 plus 1 does end up equaling 2, and the math makes sense, the logistics make sense, the logic makes sense. So that's really what Ocean Supercluster is doing. They're not just supporting us with a check, they're putting their faith into our team and really into my judgment of the people that I've brought into this circle. And we've been bootstrapped as a company, and so that means that I took a loan from my parents, and my parents are immigrants and they're not rich by any means. So they literally put together their whole life savings. My dad went into $120,000 line of credit debt to get me some cash so I can start up my dream. And we've been used to working with house money, with family money. And the stress that comes with, if I can't pay them back, this is my family money. Like we're gonna lose the house. That's not easy to manage. And so I say that to show the supporters, the taxpayers, as well as the agencies that have supported us, like Ocean Supercluster, that their money is safe with us. We've been working with family money, so we know how to keep the money safe. We're not spending extra money on extravagant offices and travels and all that. It's really just going to the hard costs, the core expenses to get us going forward, and we're nickel and diming it. We're finally putting ourselves on payroll, and it's the bare minimum just to keep us focused on it, so we're not distracted with other ways to pay the bills. And that's really what they've brought to us here. It's essentially they brought in life. They brought in air into our lungs so that we can continue to do what we do.
I love all that. Thank you for the inspiration. Tell our audience how they can get in touch with you.
Oh, I appreciate you guys. If you just go to seaweednetwork.com, the website there will take you through our whole world. It'll show you our technologies. CPS is an ag tech company, so we come with special pieces of equipment, special techniques, special IP essentially that support the farmers to grow more kelp. And not just farmers, NGOs and restoration as well. And then that really enables us to be able to buy the kelp back from them and have biomass to take to market. So if you just go to seaweednetwork.com, you'll fall into a couple rabbit holes, and one of them will eventually lead you to me.
Thank you so much for your time, but most of all for your wisdom, Majid, and what you're doing to the industry. Obviously, you're happy to visit me here on Vancouver Island so I can show you our hatchery and our ocean tenure. I'm sure we
I
can
would
do
love
some
that.
collaboration and be part of your network. Thank you again for your time. Thanks to our audience. Please remember to review the show, and I'll see you next week. Thanks again, Majid. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your time and consideration and attention. Take
Bye
care,
for now.
guys.